The water hit Maya's back like a sledgehammer, cold and vicious, sending her stumbling forward onto the sidewalk. Her pink running shoes skidded against the wet concrete as she gasped, the shock stealing her breath. Above her, from the second-floor balcony of the pristine White House, came the sound of cruel laughter. "Lazy pigs don't belong here." The voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "This is a respectable neighborhood, not a circus." Maya turned slowly, water dripping from her soaked hair, her oversized t-shirt clinging to her 13-year-old frame. The woman on the balcony held a garden hose, its nozzle still pointed downward like a weapon. She was immaculately dressed even at 7 in the morning, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. Her name was Karen Williamson, though Maya didn't know this yet. What Maya knew was the look of disgust on the woman's face, the same look she'd seen too many times before. "Did you hear me? Fatty, move along. Nobody wants to see that jiggling around here." Karen's voice carried across the quiet street, causing curtains to twitch in nearby windows. "Find a gym, not a sidewalk." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. She had been jogging this route for 3 months now, every morning at 7, trying to build her confidence and her stamina. Her father had encouraged her, bought her the pink running shoes she'd picked out herself, told her how proud he was of her commitment. This was supposed to be her safe space, her time to feel strong. "I'm just running," Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible. "I'm not bothering anyone." Karen's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Not bothering anyone. You think people want to see that bouncing around while they're having their morning coffee? You're a health hazard, sweetheart. A walking advertisement for everything wrong with this generation." The hose came alive again, this time aimed directly at Maya's face. The girl stumbled backward, her hands flying up to protect herself, but the water was relentless. Karen adjusted the nozzle to jet mode, the stream now sharp enough to sting. "Mrs. Williamson, stop!" The voice came from across the street. Old Mr. Peterson stepped onto his porch, his morning newspaper clutched in his arthritic hands. "That's enough." "Mind your own business, Harold," Karen snapped back, not lowering the hose. "I'm protecting our property values. Do you want this neighborhood to turn into some kind of freak show?" Maya was crying now, openly and without shame. The water had turned her morning run into a nightmare, her small victory into a public humiliation. She wanted to run home, to hide in her room, to never come outside again. But something in her father's voice echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than you know. Baby girl, don't let anyone dim your light." The sound of a car door slamming made everyone turn. Mrs. Chen, the neighborhood's morning dog walker, stood beside her Honda Civic with her phone raised high. The red recording light blinked steadily. "I got it all," she said, her voice steady despite the obvious anger in her eyes. Every single word. Karen's face went white. "You put that phone away right now. You have no right to record me on my own property." "Actually, I do," Mrs. Chen replied calmly. "This is a public sidewalk, and you just assaulted a child. The police are going to be very interested in this footage." The hose finally went quiet. Karen retreated slightly, but her voice remained defiant. "Assault. I was watering my plants. If that little whale happened to get in the way, that's not my problem." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving streaks of mascara across her cheek. She had started wearing a little makeup for her runs, thinking it might help her feel more confident. Now it felt like war paint washing away in the morning sun. "Maya, honey, are you okay?" Mrs. Chen approached carefully, her phone still recording. "Do you need me to call someone?" I'm fine, Maya whispered, though she was anything but fine. I just want to go home. Well, you can't, Karen's voice boomed from above. Not until you understand that actions have consequences. You want to parade around here looking like that. You need to accept that people are going to react. The cruelty in those words hit harder than the water had. Maya felt something break inside her chest. Some small part of herself that had been growing stronger with each morning run. She turned and walked away, her wet shoes squelching with every step, leaving a trail of water drops on the sidewalk like tears. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Chen's voice, clear and decisive. This is going straight to social media. The whole world is going to see what kind of person you really are. Karen Williamson. By the time Maya reached her house 6 blocks away, the video had already been uploaded to Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok simultaneously. Mrs. Chen had captioned it simply, "This is what bullying looks like. This is what we cannot allow in our community. Justice for Maya. Shishti stop bullying. Shishti body positivity." Maya's house was a modest 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and flower boxes that her mother tended every morning before work. The yellow paint was slightly faded, and the front steps creaked when you walked up them. But it was home. It was safe. It was where people loved her exactly as she was. She slipped in through the back door, hoping to avoid her parents. She needed time to process what had happened. Time to decide how much to tell them. Her father worried about her enough already, and her mother had her own struggles with weight and body image. Maya didn't want to burden them with this. But her mother, Lisa, was already in the kitchen, packing lunches for the day. She looked up as Maya entered, and her face immediately shifted from casual morning routine to maternal alarm. "Maya, sweetheart, you're soaking wet. What happened?" The story came out in broken pieces. Maya tried to minimize it, to make it sound less devastating than it had felt, but her mother's expression grew darker with each word. "She what?" Lisa's voice was dangerously quiet. "She sprayed you with a hose while you were jogging." "Mom, it's okay. I'm okay." Maya was lying, and they both knew it. "No, baby. It's not okay. None of this is okay." Lisa pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, not caring that her work clothes were getting wet. "Your father needs to hear about this. Dad's busy with work stuff. That big case. This is more important than any case." Lisa's voice brooked no argument. "Go get changed into dry clothes. I'm calling him right now." Maya trudged upstairs, her wet clothes leaving a trail on the hardwood floor. Her bedroom was her sanctuary. Walls covered with motivational posters and photos of strong women athletes. A small collection of medals from school track meets hung from a ribbon on her mirror. Nothing major, mostly participation awards. But they reminded her that she was capable of more than people assumed. She peeled off her soaked running gear and caught sight of herself in the full-length mirror. Her body wasn't magazine perfect, but it was hers. It had carried her through 3 months of consistent running. It was getting stronger, even if the changes weren't dramatic. Her father always said that strength came from the inside first, and Maya had been trying to believe him. Now, staring at her reflection, she wondered if he was wrong, if Karen Williamson was right, if she really was just fooling herself. Downstairs, her mother was on the phone, and Maya could hear the controlled anger in her voice. Lisa Rodriguez Martinez had met her husband, Chief David Martinez, 15 years ago, when he was still a patrol officer and she was working as a social worker. They had bonded over their shared commitment to protecting the vulnerable, to standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. "David, you need to come home," Lisa was saying. Someone attacked our daughter this morning. Physically attacked her while she was jogging. There was a pause. Then, yes, attacked. With a garden hose. Called her a pig. In front of neighbors. Another pause. I don't care about the budget meeting. Your daughter needs you. Maya came back downstairs in fresh clothes, her hair wrapped in a towel. She could hear her father's voice through the phone, asking questions in his professional tone, but she could detect the underlying fury that he was trying to control. Mrs. Chen got it all on video. Lisa continued. Every word, every action. It's probably all over social media by now. That stopped Maya in her tracks. Social media. She hadn't thought about that. The idea of her humiliation being broadcast to the world made her stomach churn. Mom, please tell me she didn't post it. Lisa looked at her daughter with a mixture of sympathy and determination. Baby, sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to shine a light on their behavior. Mrs. Chen did the right thing. Maya sank into a kitchen chair, her head in her hands. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to see me crying and wet and pathetic. You weren't pathetic, Lisa said firmly. You were brave. You stood up for yourself. You didn't back down even when she was being cruel. I just wanted to run, Maya whispered. I just wanted to feel strong. The front door opened with more force than necessary, and Chief David Martinez strode into the kitchen. At 6 feet 2 inches, and built like the former college linebacker he was, David Martinez commanded attention wherever he went. But when he looked at his daughter, his stern expression melted into something much softer and infinitely more dangerous. Are you hurt? His voice was gentle, professional, the voice he used with crime victims. Not physically, Maya said quietly. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Maya repeated the story, this time with more detail. Her father listened without interruption, his jaw tightening with each new piece of information. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Dad, it's not that big a deal. It's assault, he said quietly. What she did to you is assault, and harassment, and possibly a hate crime, depending on how the DA wants to pursue it. David, Lisa warned, recognizing the look in her husband's eyes. No, Lisa, no one attacks my daughter. No one. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling this in. Dad, please. I don't want to make a big thing out of this. David knelt down beside his daughter's chair, taking her hands in his. Maya, listen to me. What happened to you this morning wasn't about you. It was about her. Her ugliness, her cruelty, her need to hurt someone smaller than herself. You did nothing wrong. But maybe if I looked different. Stop. His voice was firm, but not harsh. Don't you dare let her poison your mind with that garbage. You are perfect exactly as you are. You are strong. You are brave. And you have every right to exist in this world without being attacked for it. Maya's eyes filled with tears again. But these were different tears. Relief. Maybe. Or gratitude that someone finally understood the weight she carried every day. I'm scared to go out there again, she admitted. I know, but you will. Because Martinez women don't let bullies win. He squeezed her hands. And because I'm going to make sure that woman never has the opportunity to hurt you or anyone else again. While Maya and her parents were having this conversation, Karen Williamson was discovering that the internet had a very long memory and a very short temper. The video of her attack on Maya had been shared thousands of times across multiple platforms. The comments were uniformly condemning, and Karen's full name, address, and employer had been identified and shared. Her phone had been ringing nonstop. Her employer, Pinnacle Real Estate, had already called twice asking for an explanation. Her homeowners association president had left 3 increasingly urgent messages. Even her sister in Phoenix had called, horrified by what she was seeing online. Karen stood in her pristine living room, surrounded by the material symbols of her success. Designer furniture, expensive art, fresh flowers replaced twice weekly by a service. Everything perfect, everything controlled, everything exactly as it should be in her carefully curated world. And now, a 13-year-old girl and a busybody neighbor had threatened to destroy it all. She called her lawyer first. James Whitmore had handled her divorce, her property purchases, her business contracts. He would know how to make this go away. "Karen, I've seen the video," he said without preamble when he picked up the phone. "Please tell me there's some context that makes this look better than it appears." "It's being blown out of proportion," Karen said. "I was watering my plants. The girl got in the way." There was a long pause. "Karen, in the video, you're clearly targeting her. You called her a pig. You told her she didn't belong in the neighborhood. This isn't going to be easy to defend. So what do I do?" "You apologize. Publicly, sincerely, and immediately. You make a donation to an anti-bullying charity. You pray that the family doesn't press charges." "Press charges." Karen's voice climbed an octave. "For what?" "Assault, harassment, possibly more depending on how the prosecutor wants to frame it. Karen, you physically attacked a child. On camera. The optics are catastrophic." Karen hung up without saying goodbye. Apologize to that family for protecting her neighborhood from what people who didn't fit the image she'd worked so hard to cultivate. She poured herself a glass of wine, even though it wasn't yet noon. The phone rang again. This time, it was her boss, Margaret Sinclair, and her voice was arctic. "Karen, we need to talk. Now." "I'm not coming in today. Margaret, I'm dealing with a personal situation." "Your personal situation has become a company situation. That video has been shared over 100,000 times. People are calling for boycotts of Pinnacle. They're associating your behavior with our brand." Karen felt the first flutter of real fear. Her job at Pinnacle was more than employment. It was her identity, her status, her entire social standing in the community. "It's going to blow over," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "These internet outrages always do." "Not this one. Karen, I need you to come in immediately. We have to discuss your future with the company." The line went dead. Karen stared at the phone, then hurled it across the room. It shattered against her expensive wallpaper, leaving a small dent in the plaster. Meanwhile, at the police station, Chief Martinez was reviewing the video for the 4th time. His officers had gathered around his desk, all of them watching in silence as Karen Williamson systematically humiliated and attacked his daughter. "Chief, what do you want us to do?" asked Detective Sarah Coleman, his most trusted investigator. "By the book," David said quietly. "Everything by the book. I don't want there to be any question about the integrity of this investigation." "You want someone else to handle it, given the personal nature?" David considered this. In any other circumstance, he would have recused himself immediately. But this wasn't just about his daughter anymore. The video was sparking conversations about bullying, body shaming, and community responsibility. It had become bigger than any individual case. "No, I'm going to handle it personally, but I want 2 officers with me at all times." I want everything documented. I want it done so cleanly that there's no possibility of appeal or dismissal." Detective Coleman nodded. "What's the charge?" "Start with assault. Add harassment. We'll see what the DA wants to do from there." Officer Miguel Santos, fresh out of the academy, raised his hand tentatively. "Chief, should we be worried about retaliation, I mean? If she's got money and connections?" "Let me worry about that," David said. "Your job is to execute the arrest warrant cleanly and professionally. Treat her exactly like you would any other suspect." The warrant was signed by Judge Patricia Holloway within 2 hours. Judge Holloway had seen the video, had heard the comments, and had made her decision based on the legal merits of the case. The fact that the victim was the police chief's daughter was irrelevant to the law, but it certainly made the paperwork move faster. At 2:47 p.m., exactly 7 hours and 23 minutes after she had turned a garden hose on 13-year-old Maya Martinez, Karen Williamson was arrested at her place of employment. The arrest was itself a spectacle. Karen had been called into Margaret Sinclair's office for what she assumed would be a discussion about damage control. Instead, she found 3 police officers waiting for her. "Karen Williamson, you're under arrest for assault in the 3rd degree and harassment," Officer Coleman said calmly, reading from her notes. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "This is ridiculous," Karen shrieked, loud enough that the entire office could hear. "You can't arrest me for watering my plants." "You have the right to an attorney," Coleman continued, unfazed. "If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." Karen's colleagues watched in stunned silence as she was handcuffed and led through the office. Someone had their phone out, recording the second act of the drama that had begun with a garden hose and a teenage girl's morning run. The booking process was routine but humiliating. Fingerprints, photographs, paperwork. Karen demanded to call her lawyer, demanded to speak to the police chief, demanded to know who was responsible for this miscarriage of justice. When she was finally allowed her phone call, James Whitmore's voice was grim. "I told you to apologize. Karen, now it's too late for that. Get me out of here." "I'm working on bail. But Karen, you need to understand something. This isn't just about the assault charge anymore. The video has gone viral nationally. CNN picked it up an hour ago. You're trending on Twitter." Karen's blood turned to ice. "What does that mean?" "It means your life as you knew it is over. The question now is how much of it we can salvage." At the Martinez house, the family was watching the news coverage with a mixture of satisfaction and bewilderment. Maya's story had somehow become a national conversation about bullying, body shaming, and the responsibilities of community members to protect their most vulnerable neighbors. "Dad, this is crazy," Maya said, curled up on the couch between her parents. "I just wanted to go for a run." "I know, baby. But sometimes one person's courage to stand up to a bully can inspire other people to do the same." The phone had been ringing all day. Reporters, activists, other families who had experienced similar bullying. Maya's middle school principal had called to offer support and to discuss anti-bullying programs. The mayor had called to commend Chief Martinez for his handling of the situation. But the call that mattered most came from Mrs. Chen. "Maya, sweetheart, I hope you know how proud I am of you." The older woman said, "You stood up to that bully with grace and dignity. You showed her what real strength looks like." "I don't feel strong," Maya admitted. "I feel embarrassed that everyone saw me crying." "Honey, there's nothing embarrassing about crying when someone hurts you. That's called being human. What's embarrassing is being a grown woman who attacks children. Karen Williamson was released on bail at 8:30 p.m. She returned to her perfect house to find her front yard filled with protesters. They weren't violent or destructive, but they were persistent. Signs reading, "Stop bullying our kids," and "Maya deserves better," dotted her lawn. She called the police to report the trespassing, only to be told that as long as the protesters remained on public property, they had every right to be there. The officer who took her call was professionally polite, but Karen could hear the coldness in his voice. The next morning, Karen woke up to find her perfect world in ruins. Pinnacle Real Estate had announced her termination in a press release that was carefully worded but crystal clear. They would not tolerate employees who engaged in harassment or discrimination. Her homeowners association had called an emergency meeting to discuss her conduct. 3 clients had canceled their listings. But the worst blow came from an unexpected source: her own family. Her sister Jennifer called from Phoenix, her voice tight with anger and disappointment. "Karen, what the hell is wrong with you? That was a child. A child." "Jenny, you don't understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly. I watched the video. We all watched the video. Mom watched the video. Karen, she's 83 years old, and she had to watch her daughter attack a 13-year-old girl with a garden hose." Karen felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What did Mom say?" "She cried. She actually cried. Karen. She said she didn't raise you to be cruel." The conversation ended with Jennifer's final words: "Don't call me until you figure out how to make this right. I'm embarrassed to be related to you." Karen sat in her silent house, surrounded by her perfect things, and realized that she had lost everything that actually mattered. Her job, her reputation, her family's respect, her place in the community, all because she couldn't tolerate the sight of a teenage girl trying to improve herself. At the Martinez house, Maya was preparing for her first run since the incident. She had spent the day reading the supportive messages that had poured in from around the country. Runners, athletes, parents, kids who had faced similar bullying. Their words had helped rebuild something that Karen's cruelty had tried to tear down. "You sure you're ready for this?" her father asked, lacing up his own running shoes. "You're coming with me." "If you want me to. Just for today. Just to make sure you feel safe." Maya nodded. She wasn't sure she could face that sidewalk alone yet. But with her father beside her, she felt like she could handle anything. They stepped out into the morning air. Maya in her new running outfit. Her mother had insisted on a shopping trip and found something unexpected. Mrs. Chen was waiting by the front gate, dressed in workout clothes that had clearly been hastily assembled. "Mind if I join you?" she asked with a smile. "I could use the exercise." Before Maya could answer, Mr. Peterson appeared from across the street, walking slowly but determinedly toward them. "Room for one more." Soon, Maya found herself at the center of an impromptu parade. Neighbors emerged from their houses, some in proper running gear, others in whatever they could find. By the time they reached Karen Williamson Street, there were nearly 30 people walking, jogging, and running together. Karen watched from her upstairs window as the group passed her house. She saw Maya in the center, flanked by her father and surrounded by a community that had rallied to support her. The girl was smiling, laughing at something Mrs. Chen had said. She looked strong, confident, untouchable. Karen realized in that moment that she had been wrong about everything. The girl wasn't the problem with the neighborhood. Karen was. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. Karen's lawyer had negotiated a plea deal that would involve community service, anger management classes, and a public apology. It was better than she deserved. and they both knew it. But, as she watched Maya and her supporters disappear around the corner, Karen understood that the legal consequences were the least of her problems. She had revealed something ugly about herself to the world, and there was no taking it back. The neighborhood had chosen its side, and it wasn't hers. Over the following weeks, the story took on a life of its own. Maya's morning run had sparked a national conversation about body positivity, community responsibility, and the long-term effects of bullying. Schools across the country implemented new anti-bullying programs. Running groups organized Maya runs to support young athletes facing discrimination. Maya herself became an unlikely advocate. She started a blog called Running My Own Race, where she wrote about body image, self-acceptance, and finding strength in community. Her first post, titled "The Day Someone Tried to Wash Away My Dreams," was shared over 1 million times. Karen Williamson completed her community service at a local youth center, where she was required to help with after-school programs. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that she was now legally obligated to support the very children she had once scorned. But something unexpected happened during those long hours at the community center. Surrounded by kids from all backgrounds, all body types, all levels of athletic ability, Karen began to see what she had been blind to before. These weren't problems to be solved or images to be corrected. They were human beings, each with their own struggles, dreams, and intrinsic worth. One afternoon, a 10-year-old girl named Sophie approached her hesitantly. Sophie was shy, overweight, and had been the target of bullying at school. She reminded Karen painfully of Maya. "Mrs. Williamson," Sophie said quietly, "can you help me with my homework?" Karen looked down at the child, seeing herself reflected in Sophie's uncertain eyes. This was her chance to be the person she should have been from the beginning. "Of course. Sweetheart, what subject?" As the months passed, Karen began to understand the difference between the person she had been and the person she could become. Her old life was gone. But maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. She had been living in a world of her own creation, one where worth was measured by appearance and conformity. It had been a small, cruel world, and she had been its queen. Now, she was just Karen, trying to make amends for the harm she had caused. The legal case was resolved with Karen pleading guilty to harassment and agreeing to complete 200 hours of community service. She also agreed to make a public apology, which she delivered at a community meeting 6 months after the incident. The meeting was held at the local high school auditorium, packed with neighbors, reporters, and supporters of Maya's story. Karen stood at the podium, looking out at faces that ranged from curious to hostile to cautiously hopeful. 6 months ago, I did something unforgivable, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I attacked a child for no reason other than my own ignorance and cruelty. I told myself I was protecting something, but I was really just protecting my own narrow view of how the world should look. She paused, finding Maya in the audience. The girl was sitting with her parents, her expression neutral but attentive. "Maya, I can't undo what I did to you. I can't take back the words I said or the pain I caused. But I can promise you this. I am not the same person who hurt you that morning. The person I am now is horrified by the person I was then." Maya stood up slowly. The auditorium fell silent. "Mrs. Williamson," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I forgive you." The words hung in the air like a benediction. Karen's composure cracked, and she began to cry, not the angry, frustrated tears of a woman whose plans had been ruined, but the cleansing tears of someone who had been offered a grace she didn't deserve. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya nodded once, then sat back down. Her father squeezed her hand, his pride evident in his expression. The meeting continued with discussions about community standards, anti-bullying initiatives, and the establishment of a scholarship fund in Maya's name for young athletes facing discrimination. But the moment everyone would remember was that simple exchange between a woman who had fallen as far as possible and a girl who had found the strength to lift her back up. 2 years later, Maya was the captain of her high school cross-country team. Her blog had evolved into a non-profit organization supporting young athletes of all body types. She still ran the same route every morning. But now, she was often joined by other kids from the neighborhood who had found inspiration in her story. Karen had moved to a smaller house on the other side of town. She continued her work at the youth center, now as a volunteer rather than court-ordered community service. She had never married, had no children of her own, but she had found purpose in supporting other people's children. On the second anniversary of the incident, Karen was at the youth center when she received an unexpected visitor. Maya, now 15 and tall for her age, stood in the doorway of the craft room where Karen was helping a group of 8-year-olds make friendship bracelets. "Hi, Mrs. Williamson." Karen looked up, startled. "Maya, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see what you were up to. Mrs. Chen said you've been working here for a long time now." Karen nodded, suddenly nervous. 2 years next month." Maya looked around the room, taking in the artwork on the walls. The children bent over their projects, the genuine smile on Karen's face as she helped a little boy untangle his thread. "You look happy," Maya observed. "I am," Karen said, and realized it was true. "Happier than I've ever been. Actually," Maya smiled, the same brilliant smile that had been captured in the photograph that now hung in the youth center's main hallway, the picture of her crossing the finish line at the state cross-country championship. Arms raised in victory. "Good," Maya said simply. "Everyone deserves to be happy." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mrs. Williamson, thank you for becoming someone worth forgiving." After Maya left, Karen sat quietly for a moment, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of children creating art. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, so concerned with appearances and control that she had forgotten the most important thing: we are all just people, trying to find our way in the world, deserving of kindness and respect, regardless of how we look or where we come from. That evening, Karen walked home through the same neighborhood where Maya had once been attacked. The streets were different now, more diverse, more welcoming, more aware of the impact that small acts of cruelty or kindness could have on a young person's life. As she passed the corner where it had all begun, Karen saw a group of kids getting ready for an evening run. They were all different sizes, different ages, different levels of ability. But they were together, supporting each other, celebrating the simple joy of movement and community. One of them, a girl who couldn't have been more than 12, waved at Karen as she passed. "Hi, Mrs. Williamson. See you at the center tomorrow." "I'll be there. Emma, have a good run." Karen continued walking, her heart full in a way it had never been when her life was perfect, and her house was pristine, and her world was small. She had learned the hard way that true happiness doesn't come from controlling your environment or excluding people who don't fit your vision. It comes from opening your heart wide enough to include everyone, especially those who need support the most. The hose that had once been a weapon of humiliation now watered flowers that grew in community gardens throughout the neighborhood. Maya's story had planted seeds of kindness that continued to bloom, reminding everyone who heard it that our choices matter. Our words have power, and it's never too late to choose compassion over cruelty. In the end, That's what the neighborhood learned from a 13-year-old girl who refused to let a bully dim her light, that the strongest thing any of us can do is keep running our own race. No matter who tries to stop us.